So I am absolutely terrible at time management. It's like one of the worst things I do in life. You can ask my family, my kids especially. If Dad is going to go work on something and tells them, oh, it's just going to be a few minutes, like Henry knows very quickly it's not going to be a few minutes. He knows. Like I'm very bad at just estimating time and how long time takes, right? And usually it's not a big deal, except for the fact that I also am really bad at that when it comes to like needing to be places. You know, like I get late way too often, and I don't like being late, but I do because I always think in my head, oh, it's, you know, I don't have to leave till this time. I got plenty of time, right? And then I'll go do something and forget about the time, and then I'll realize I'm in a hurry. And like it was especially hard when I had kids. It took me forever. I still haven't realized it. Kids take a long time to get ready. I can't get that through my head, so I always think in my head, oh, we got plenty of time, and then I'm like, okay, it's time to leave, and then it takes another 10 minutes for they get them in the car and out the house, and I'm late, right? And I don't like being late. I just don't. And I do it way too often. But luckily, thankfully for me, usually when I'm late, it really doesn't matter. Like, it's an annoyance, I think. I'm sure people would get a little upset at me, like, where is he? Like, what's he doing? Right? But it's not a life or death scenario or anything. It's usually okay. Right? That's not the case in our gospel today. Right? Jesus is late, and it was very much a life and death scenario. Right? His friend was sick, very sick. Right? And he got word that he was sick, and instead of taking off right away to rush over there and help, he waited. He waited a couple days. Right? And it was very bad time management. He seemed to not be worried about it at all. And he tells his disciples, it's fine, it's no big deal. Right? Even though, you know, he knows he's sick, he knows he's going to die, Jesus still says, it's okay, you know. I don't mind being late. Which he doesn't seem to. But some people did. Because that's what happens when Jesus finally gets there. We get this really intense scene. As Jesus finally gets there, and he's late, and it's too late, the guy has died, and out comes one of his sisters, right, Martha. And she says to him, why are you late? Why weren't you here? Like, where were you? If only you were here. If you would have been here, he would have been okay. Right? We know you can heal people. That's why we sent for you, Jesus. Right? Where were you? Why weren't you here? She is upset, and rightfully so. Her brother has died, and the one person she knew that could save him showed up too late. And she lets Jesus know, if only you were here. If you were here, we could have done something. But now it's too late. And she's not alone in thinking that. Because as her sister comes out to see Jesus as well, she says the exact same thing. Right? Why weren't you here? Why couldn't you get here sooner? Right? We could have saved him. Right? It's an intense moment. Right? And we can see that from how Jesus responds. Because throughout this whole story, the first part of this whole story, Jesus is not worried at all about the fact that Lazarus is sick and that Lazarus is going to die. Right? He's very, very cavalier with it when he talks to the disciples. You know, he says, well, he's just asleep. I got to go wake him up. And they don't even get that. And then he says, no, he's dead. It's okay. But it's okay. It's okay that he's dead. Right? I'm glad he's dead, he says. I'm glad that I wasn't there. Because now you can see just how great I am. Now you can really see my glory. Right? Jesus he's so confident of what he's going to do, you know. He's not worried about it. And yet here he is now confronted with the reality of the fact that he was late, and he's not quite as confident anymore. Right? Here he is with these two sisters who he loves, who are dear friends of him, upset and saying, why weren't you here? Here he is surrounded by mourners, crying out in pain and hurt. Here he is at the tomb of his friend, whose dead body is laying inside. And he weeps. Right? He's not confident. He's not telling everybody, don't worry, I got this. He's not saying, I'm glad he's dead anymore. He weeps, overcome with the emotion of the whole thing. Because even for Jesus, who knows that he is, the resurrection, that knows he is the life, death is hard. And being face to face with it, being confronted with the realities of death, right? He cries and he weeps and he's distraught, right? Deeply distressed in spirit, the Bible tells us. Right? That's what death does. And yet, Jesus doesn't stay distraught. Because Jesus knew something. This whole time, this whole story, Jesus knew something that no one else knew. Right? And Martha was close to it. Right? She knew that Jesus could do anything. She knew that resurrection was a thing. But even she didn't really understand what Jesus was truly capable of. Because as she tells him, if only, maybe you could still rise him in the last day. I know that that's a thing. But even she wasn't thinking like right now he can come out alive. Right? But Jesus knows something she didn't know. That he is the resurrection and the life. Right now, at this very moment, Jesus is resurrection and life. And so after he gets done, right, crying and weeping, as he's still distraught by the realities of death, he goes to the tomb. And he tells them to roll away the stone. And we get this great moment where they're like, you do not want to do that. He's been dead for 4 days. It's going to smell. And he says, no, just do it. And he yells into this open tomb, Lazarus, come out. He yells at the dead man, cut out of there. And we get probably one of the craziest sentences in the entire Bible. The man who was dead walked out. The man who was dead walked out alive. Because Jesus is the resurrection and the life. And he was there. And in that moment, death wasn't strong enough to keep Lazarus down anymore. In that moment, Jesus showed his true power, his true strength. The strength that only he has. The strength to command a dead person to come out alive. And that's what Lazarus does. And in that moment, Mary and Martha and Lazarus and all those who are gathered there finally truly understood who Jesus was. He's not just a prophet. He is the Messiah, the Son of God. He is the person, the only person who has power even over death. He is the resurrection. He is life. That's what he was for Lazarus. And that's what he still is for us today. And that's why this story is so important. Because I think it still captures a very, very real thing that everyone who lives experiences. It captures the hurt that death brings. It captures the pain of losing someone you love. It captures just how intense those emotions are. Because we've all been there. We've all been in those moments like Mary and Martha, where we cry out wondering, why did this have to happen? Where was God? Why didn't God do something? Why did that person have to die? We've all been there with Jesus, overcome with the emotions of death, weeping and crying when that reality hits. Death is hard. Even for us Christians, right? For us Christians who believe in eternal life, death is hard. It was hard for Jesus. It was hard for Mary and Martha. It's hard for us. And that doesn't change. And yet, in those moments where we experience death, where we see it firsthand, and when we feel the pain and hurt that it brings, in those moments, we have Jesus' promise that he is resurrection, that he is life. And in the midst of our hurt and the pain, we have a source of hope. In the face of death itself, we have a promise of life. That is what Jesus brings. And he doesn't help but take away all the bad things, but he comes in those moments to remind us of who he truly is. So that even when we're dealing with the realities and the hurts of death, we have a reason to find joy. As a pastor, I see a lot of death. It's not my favorite part of the job. It's the worst part of the job. It is. You be with families as they grieve. I've been at many a bedside, and I've watched people die. And it's hard every time. It is. And I've experienced it myself. I've had people close to me die, and it hurts. And yet, in those moments, every single time I've been with a family as a loved one dies, every single time I've experienced the pain of death myself, you know what I do? I get up in front of everybody, all the family and friends gathered together, and I tell them the same thing Jesus told Mary and Martha. Right? That Christ is resurrection and life, and that those who believe in him shall never die. Because that's the truth that we cling to in those moments. Because that's the source of hope that we have in the most hopeless of situations. Because we have a God who is more powerful than death itself. And when we know that and believe that, and we have that promise, even though death still hurts, and it does, right, we can face it. We can face it because we know that Christ is resurrection and life, and that those who we lose, we will see again. Right? That those who we lose and who death has taken, they don't stay dead forever. Because we have a God who is resurrection, and we have a God who is life. And that is true for everyone who believes in him. They shall never die. So as you go through life and you face the realities of death, and you will, including your own, remember those words. Remember that Christ is resurrection and life. Remember that those who believe in him shall never die. And let that be your source of strength and hope. Let that fill you with the joy that only Christ can give. And know just how powerful that truth really is. Christ is resurrection and life. Christ is stronger than death. And in him we shall never die. Know that life. Know that truth. Know it now, and know it forever. Amen.